And welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the negative space lantern. Now when we do this, we're going to be taking some railroad board or similar to poster board, and we're going to be cutting out some designs in it. And those designs are all going to be related. So this particular one here is all about volleyball. So you've got a volleyball here, you've got the net behind it. On the sides it says serve, spike, set, bump, block, and then there's a dig. So it's all stuff that's related. We have opposite sides are the same on this one. If you want to have all four sides be the same, that is fine as well. As long as it all fits into a particular theme, whether that theme could be animals, it could be racing, it could be cars, it could be beauty supplies, it could be whatever you can think of that you can get four things out of, or even two, that is perfectly fine. So the way that we're going to start this, we are going to get our template. Now this template has everything laid out the way that we need to, so that way we can take our board and we should be able to get two out of these. So when you're working with it, find somebody else that has already got one going, and we want to line the straight edge up with the very edge, so that way we don't have to do any extra cutting. Get all of our sides lined up and make sure that we hold it in place. And we're going to go around and trace out all of our sides. Now, if you need to have somebody else hold it for you while you trace it out, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it's a little tricky and you might need a little bit of extra help. And then we're gonna go in, we're gonna put little marks here out in the middle, so that way we know where our folds are going to be. And we've got this point right there, we got that point, so really we're just going to work off of our edges and that will be just fine. So that right there is going to be our piece that we work from. Now if you miss any little spots, just go back in, get those touched up, set that aside. Now you're going to take some scissors, and you want to make sure when you cut this out that you are very precise with it. We want to make sure that we get nice straight edges cut, and when we come into the corners that we get in there and make sure that everything is marked up really good. If we don't get those, then you're going to have stuff that's going to be a little bit crooked, or it's not going to fold quite right. So once you get it cut out, come in, we're going to measure, or rather we're going to draw some straight lines. These straight lines are going to help us figure out where our folds are going to be. So we're going to take this edge, we're going to run that right across there, and we're going to line up the ruler with the edge of the paper. Now these should be 15 centimeters wide. So if you are unsure if you've got everything straight, you can come back in with your ruler and measure everything and make sure that we're all good. So now we've got all of our sections laid out there. So once you get all of your sections done, you have everything cut out, we're going to come in and we're going to draw our lines in. Now you can see right here on our template, we're going to come in 1 centimeter on each of the sides. What that's going to do is that's going to give us the space that we need right here on the edge, so that way we have a nice strong corner, because we don't want to take and have our drawing go all the way up to the edge, because that's going to create a weak spot. So we want to have a little bit of a border all the way around, so that way we have a little bit of strength. And 1 centimeter on each side will work out just right, and that'll give us 1 centimeter on each side of the corner, and that should be plenty strong enough to keep everything in place. Now once you have everything measured out, so we'll go through with your ruler and we're going to find 1 centimeter on each of your sides. And what's important when you do this, mark on one end, go up and mark on the other end, because we want to connect our dots, so that way we make sure we have nice straight lines. if you don't connect your dots, then your lines are going to be crooked. So we want to make sure that we work all the way around, get all four sides on each one, and that will make sure that it all works out just right. So take your time with it, make sure that it is accurate, because if you're off, it's going to give you problems in the end of it. So once you have this done, then you're going to go through, you're going to draw everything out. So this is a different version of the project, but you can see with this one, well, for starters, we're going to do some thumbnails. So draw out 4 squares. Okay, and that's where you're going to figure out where each of your ideas is going to come from. So just kind of sketch it out, see how it's going to be on the page. Remember, it's going to be a square. So that's how we want to draw out our thumbnail shapes. Once you have that figured out, then you're going to come in, you're going to draw each of those onto each of the sections. Now this one has a deer with some birds sitting on it on opposite sides, and then it has some birds on the other side of it. And that's fine. We're just going to repeat those 2 ideas. So that works out well. So once you have everything drawn out, then you're going to come in with an X-Acto. Now it's important with an X-Acto that you want to be cautious how you use it. Okay, so I always hold it like you do a regular pencil. Put it between your thumb and your forefinger. Put your middle finger underneath. Now, when you go to cut, okay, it's very important that you take your time and make sure that you have something underneath it. So we'll have some scrap mat board that you can put down, or I have some cutting boards that we can put down. Either one of those things will work. And it's important that as you cut, you always want to be cutting away from you. Hold it on the top side and then cut away from your fingers, so that way you don't end up cutting into your hand. That's a bad time right there. So, and I always hold it a little bit flat like this, because the way the blade is, the entire surface of the blade will cut. So if you have something that's perfectly straight, you can hold it a little flatter. Tip it up like this and put a little pressure and pull through. Okay. Now, I will say this, if you have a lot of really small design curves, it gets to be a little tricky. So you might want to make it to where your curves are a little more swooping, or have it to be where everything is very geometric. Very geometric shapes like this work out really well. Part of the negative space aspect of this is that we do have to fill in all of the gaps that are there. So with the volleyball one here, it works out that there's no space here because the ball is hit up, but we do have the net that helps to fill that in there. With the words that are on the side, we just have a bunch of shapes that are organic that kind of fill in all the space. So realistically, we want to have all of the space filled in. So when you have all of these drawn out, that we have that little gap that's on the edge, you want whatever design you're going to do to fill in all of that space. Okay, when we have this one, so this big open space makes this bird really flimsy. This same thing with the deer. This big open space makes it really flimsy. It's going to flop around a lot. So we want to have some designs in the background that help fill that space in, so that way it will be nice and strong, because ultimately you're going to be picking this up, setting it down, because we're going to be able to put one of those battery powered votive candles underneath it, and it'll act like a lantern. So once you have everything laid out and you have all of your stuff cut, then we're going to start to fold it. Now, where you have your lines that we drew earlier, you're going to come in and you want to put a ruler down, and then take your board or your paper, and we're going to crease it over like this. We want to use that ruler to create a nice straight edge. And we're going to go through and do that with all of our sections. Okay? And every line that you have, whether it is a tab or whether it is a side, we want to make sure that all that stuff gets bent. Now, it might even work out a little better if you bend all this stuff ahead of time, so that way you're not trying to move it around with all of your pieces, your little intricate cuts. So it'd probably be a good idea to bend all that stuff ahead of time and make sure everything is going to fit, so that way we can make any adjustments ahead of time. So you want to pre-fit everything. Now, when we go to glue this together, okay, we're going to use the hot glue gun, because this stuff it's a little bit thicker, it will hold up to some strength, and it'll have regular Elmer's glue is not going to work. So we want to start with our first tab. We're going to come in, we're going to put a bead of hot glue underneath it, and we're going to put that in place. Okay. Now, for demonstration's sake, we're just going to put a piece of tape in there, so that way we can move along with this. Now, it's always important when you're working with hot glue to be cautious and don't get your fingers in there. So we're going to put some glue in there and get that put in place. Then we come around and we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Now, this is one too. You might need a friend to help you do this, so that way you're not struggling with it, because the map or the board does have a tendency to want to fight against all of those bends, so you might want to have a little bit of a crease to it. And then for the last one, we're going to come in, we're going to do that same thing. We're going to put a little bead of hot glue down in there. Always make sure that everything is lining up on the outside, so that way you get a nice straight piece. And then we take our last section, get our glue gun in there like that. Make sure everything is lined up on the outside and get that put into place. So now you have, if you've got everything measured correctly, you have a nice cube that you can take. This is your votive candle, you turn it on, set it down like that. Now, there is one last step that we're going to do. So we're going to take some tissue paper, and because we want the light to kind of dissipate a little bit, so it's not quite so bright, we're going to take some tissue paper, we're going to do some measuring, so that way we can get a piece that fits directly inside of it like that. I'll have some different colored tissue papers. I also have some other colors other than white to make your thing out of. And then we're going to take that tissue paper and we're just going to drop it in there, and we'll put a little dab of glue on each of the corners, just a piece of Elmer's, and that will hold that in place, so that way we have a slightly different color behind our background. Even with the white staying on the white, it is a little bit different, so you can still see that it is there. And put a little candle down, set it over the top like that, and you have a nice decorative piece that you can use. All right, and that is it. So good luck and good drawing.